Hello, welcome to a behind the scenes video I decided to throw together for the Ubel Kickstarter trailer. I know I don't make these kind of videos super often, but I figured it'd be fun to kind of break down the process on this since there were some things in this trailer that were a bit new or interesting, and it's one of the larger projects that I've worked on recently. If you haven't seen the video yet and want to give it a look, I'll put the link in the description below, as well as any and all relevant information or links discussed in this video. To start with, I'll go over a couple frequently asked questions, and then I'll go into the specifics for a few of the different shots. If there's anything I don't go over though, or you have any questions about anything specific, just leave it in the comments and I'll try to go through as many as I can, or just reach out to me on Twitter, or even while I'm live streaming, which I do every now and then. So I'd say the most frequent question I get is what program I use, and this is Adobe After Effects. It's the one I use primarily nowadays. Some of y'all might remember I used to use HitFilm Pro back in the day. At some point after making that Danganronpa video, I switched over to After Effects when I started doing more frequent commission videos because it's just a bit more capable of different things. I will be honest though, there are a few things I miss from HitFilm, and I do still recommend HitFilm if you're just starting out. But I also use Blender for anything requiring 3D elements, and then I used Premiere for a little bit of the sound work afterwards. It also went through like a sound guy who did some extra audio leveling, so it wasn't all me, but I used Premiere for a little bit of that. The other frequent question would be how long the video took me. This trailer, I started it like early January and it was done like mid-March, I think. But there were a couple delays for a couple things. Like part of it was like one person waiting on another for a thing back and forth. And then I also got COVID like early January. So that was like, it was like I started the video, had like a week, and then immediately got sick and had to take like a week off. But other than that, I'd say like maybe 2 months about. To get started, I'll explain the way that I kind of organize and compile my shots and exporting, that kind of thing. I can't say I know for sure the correct way to do it. This is just the way I do it, and it kind of depends on what you're working on as well. So this is my entire video right here. Like it's all kind of just here. If I were to take this entire comp and export it, you would get the whole video more or less. But I don't actually export and render that way because it would take like forever, and there's a couple other downsides to it. Like one, if it were to like crash halfway through, I guess you gotta start it again. Also, if you decide, say there's this shot right here and you wanted it to be a different color for whatever reason, and say I like did that, but then I would have to like re-export the whole video just because I made like one change to one shot. Or even if it was something on one frame, like, oh, on that frame, like this flare effect, like it does a weird thing and I want to fix that. I don't want to re-export the entire project. So my personal kind of method for this is I usually start by exporting it all kind of as one thing, or at least in chunks, but I export it as a frame sequence. And let me find my frame sequence for this video. So basically what I'm working with is a bunch of PNG files, and this is like the whole video as PNG frames, and I export it this way. And then afterwards I can bring it back into After Effects and have like a comp for that and put the sound back on because the PNGs won't have sound. And then sometimes I'll put on extra effects that I kind of wanted to do later on. And it's just a bit easier this way sometimes because I can mess around with it for like a whole section real easy. But I bring it back in, and then I export this as like an MP4 or any version for web really. And the benefit to that is that I could say go to like a shot over here and I could change the color of something because I wanted it to be a certain color, and then I just say like, okay, start here, like end there, and re-export that specific shot, and I wait like a fraction of the time because I'm only exporting that, and then I take those frames from the new export and overwrite the old ones wherever it may be. As long as you name it the same, like naming convention, After Effects will keep the numbers correct so it goes in like the right place. And then you find your thing in the thing, You like find the frame sequence in the project, and you usually have to reload it because it won't do it by default. You just right click, hit reload. It'll basically take another look at the footage and go, oh, hey, something changed, and it'll update the frames. And so you do that, and then you can export the MP4, which from here exports super fast. Like I can play this. Oh, it's a bit loud. I'm gonna go in the old volume mixer real quick. Like I can go in here and play it nearly real time. I mean, sometimes it gets caught up on something, but I mean, I am playing it on quarter res as well, but way faster than not, because these frames are technically speaking already rendered. And then, yeah, it's extremely helpful for commissions, because a lot of times a client will say, well, actually, I don't like the way this one shot looks, or can we change this one effect on this or this small thing? And you can export exactly what you need to without re-exporting the entire video. Which I find really handy. And it's probably, like, I don't know if that's a common method at all. It's just what I do, and I'm very used to it. I kind of started doing it after I started using Blender, because it's very common in 3D animation to export individual frames, which at first I was afraid of, because I was like, I don't want to have, a folder of like 3,840 frames. That just seems way too extra. But I mean, it's not that insane, and the file size is like 8 gigabytes, which, I mean, if you really lack the hard drive space, could be a problem. But every time you re-export, you just override the same frame, so you're not adding more to it over time. And on top of that, if your export crashes halfway through, you still have like whatever frames were saved. Like if it cut off here, like you were exporting this shot and it crashed halfway through, you could just tell it to start there and continue from there. Same thing you can do in Blender, because in Blender, if you're doing like a 3D crazy super photorealistic shot and it takes like 20 seconds or more per frame, it's like you don't want to really waste time re-rendering things. But yeah, that's my process for kind of rendering and exporting and compiling and organizing these things. It'll be comps within comps, but then everything goes into one big comp, and from there I just export whatever chunks I need to. So with all that overall stuff out of the way, I figure we can delve into some of the individual shots now. A lot of the opening shots, like the kind of opening with the character animation shots, are set up kind of the same way. I want to make a quick note. I had no hand in like the art. I'm just like technical video guy. I'm like compositing basically is my thing. Like I didn't draw. I can't draw currently. I'd love to learn sometime. But, I didn't draw the characters. And when it comes to like the character animations, like the character looking up, I didn't do that. Or the, oh, it's over here. Like the character looking down, sorry, one of those directions. Or the hand closing or the running that happens later. That's not me. I was just given like frames for that. In fact, I could probably find them somewhere. I was given like individual frames for that, and then told some instructions on the correct way to utilize those frames. But the exception to that would be the puppet animation I do at the very beginning, which is what I use to get the kind of hair and skirt movement that happens here. If we let's enhance computer enhance. Nope, not that button. Can you play? Oh, you're trying your best. How about we go on like quarter res or half res? This will be a recurring theme, I think. But yeah, the hair kind of waves in the wind, and the skirt waves in the wind, and even like the dice move like a little bit back and forth. So those movements are all done with the After Effects puppet tool. And if we go into, say, the hair, we've got effects, puppet, and the puppet effect is created whenever you start using the puppet tool. I had to, look up a tutorial for the puppet tool because I don't always get a chance to use it. But basically you can put pins down and then you can move them around, and the pins kind of determine where things move in relation to each other. So you just kind of get used to where you should put them and about how many for the kind of movement you're looking for. But then you can animate these pins afterwards. So I was able to take, I think it's like all these ones right here. You can see I have my keyframes kind of offset a bit. So like this one is this pin right here, It's got a very simple movement of that way and that way. And I have an expression on it, which is just a little bit of code that you can do in After Effects. And there are some really basic things you can do in it, so it's not actually as complicated as code. But if you are like super smart, you can do like actual code, or things. I don't know how it works. Not like actual code, but kind of actual code. Maybe I don't know things, but I do know that if you type loop out like this, it loops your keyframes. So you can just kind of do that, can't you? And it goes back and forth. Yeah, I've got basically all of these looping, and I think they all pretty much just have kind of a back and forth. This one has a bit of a different movement, but they all do that. And so to start with, if all these keyframes were aligned correctly, the entire head of hair would just be moving right and left, like all as one. And that's not really how hair moves. It's more of a wave, kind of a flow. So basically the keyframes are set up to emulate that. So like this one starts, then this one goes, then this one goes, and then this one goes back and this one goes back. But it all kind of happens overlaid on top of each other, so that you get this kind of, it starts from the top and works its way down. And that's how the keyframes are set up. And then also just do the same thing for the skirt. And the dice were pretty straightforward. It might have also been a little puppet tool. Nope, I just put a pin in it, I think. I just, can we get a visual? Can we get a visual on that pin? There it is. I didn't put a pin in it. That would be like the puppet tool. But I put the anchor point right here and just animated the rotation. And for some reason, there's expressions on everything else. I don't know why. I must have done that by accident. I must have been going absolutely insane. But that rotates back and forth. The hair kind of moves on a puppet animation kind of way. And then it gets put into the scene. And so with these scenes, I was usually given like an image like this, and it would be, say, a Photoshop file. It usually is, with like separated layers for different things. And it kind of depends on the project in question for exactly what you might be working with. Like ideally, every layer like that has to be on a separate plane of existence, is like separated from each other. So like the balcony being separate from the front row of buildings, being separate from the back row of buildings, which is separate from the sky, which then, even then, like is handy to have separate from the clouds, because I think, yeah, there's like a bit of cloud movement happening in here. And there's a bit of an issue where the edges are seen, but it's such high-res artwork, you just zoom in a bit and it's not a problem. So that is the benefit to the super high-res artwork. The downside is that my project takes a long time to render anything happening. The character is... Oh, right. I soloed the dice. Okay. Bring them back, please. There we go. But yeah, then you basically take all the individual layers and then you have to set it up as a bit more of a 3D scene. So if I were to go to like a custom view here, and you can see like I took these and I made the background be really far away and then scaled it up, and then I had the rails be like a little bit far away and scaled it up. And so once you get like the view, like it looks just like the original image, except when the camera moves in and out on quarter res, so we can actually watch it somewhat real time. The rails move separately from the buildings and the sky can move. Let's go back on full because I just want to go over like some of the effects. I've got like a bunch of point lights put down right here, and turning these off and on will show you like kind of this is what I had to start with, and then I put a bunch of lighting on it to give it kind of, a bit more of a look. I like using lights to give it a look because you can kind of, have certain parts be brighter and certain ones darker easier than you can with just kind of a darkened edges, because I put that on top as well. If we take that off, I have an adjustment layer with some slight color adjustment, like a noise thing. I've heard this pronounced both vignette and like vignette. I don't quite know the correct pronunciation, but like my brain says it's got to be vignette because that's clearly the more fun way to say it. But yeah, I also like to put a little effect on. Oh, I've got it all turned off, don't I? I like a little effect that kind of warps the edges a little bit, and the vignette is basically some darker edges. But all that turns on, and then all the lighting turns on, and you've got kind of your shot. But usually I'll turn like all of that kind of stuff off to start with, and I'll just start with camera motion and just kind of, start the camera way in here. Let's go back to low res. The camera pulls in, doesn't it? I think an early version of this shot, when I was first starting, the camera moved back rather than forward. But this is just kind of the way I liked better, because you got to see more of the puppet animation. But then, we move on to the next shot, and it's pretty much set up the same way. You'll see, have the images, have the clouds move in the background, and everything's 3D. But what we have here is rain. And the rain is a little bit complicated, because originally, there's a few different ways you can do rain in After Effects, or just in general. Rain comes in many forms, and let me put this on full res so I can kind of see the rain real quick. But basically, originally I had a simpler method for the rain, and it looked a bit less good to start with. So I I think I've got it, here, maybe. You can actually barely see it. It was like the rain effect, but I made the rain like too thin and too blendy with the background, so you could like barely see it, and so now you can see it a little bit better. But the rain went through a couple upgrades, because later in the video I use rain again, but like a bit more intense, and the camera's like moving and stuff, and I realized that I needed like the rain to not all just be kind of in the front, because when you do like the rain effect in After Effects, it's like a 2D effect. Like some raindrops might be smaller than others, but it's all on one 2D plane. And so usually you kind of want it to feel like the rain is 3D and it's there. Like some raindrops go behind them and some go in front of them. You can kind of do that if you take the rain layer and duplicate it and put it behind the character, scale it like up a bit, then you've got some rain behind, some in front. But if you have a lot of elements in a scene, like you want it to go behind like the trees over here, but then also in front of the trees and behind the bus stop, and then in front of the bus stop, and then the camera's like moving all around, but the rain you can kind of tell is like a 2D thing, because it's just these 2D little planes, and when you start close up then zoom out, then that plane has to really be big, or else you could see the edges of that plane. So what I ended up going for was like a particle system, and I messed around with this for like a long time. In fact, I'm gonna like jump ahead real quick and go to that bus stop scene. Yeah, the camera like starts way up here, and then moves like way back. But what I ended up going for is this layer here, which is the Trapcode Particular plugin, which it's always kind of annoyed me about After Effects, is that there's some things that I felt like there were some things I could do in hit film that After Effects just couldn't do, but the people would be like, well, you can do it, you just have to buy this really expensive plugin. And I would be like, well, I don't really want to do that. I wish it was just, part of the program. But After Effects does kind of have its own particle systems, but they don't quite do all the things that I like it to do. Like in hit film, I felt like you had more options. You could have kind of that displacement that looked more like, you could have like particles looking like they're flowing in the wind a little bit, and it felt a bit more right. Like I would do like sparks or like embers flying up in hit film, but in After Effects I felt like I had more difficulty with that. But this plugin's really good. It just always bugged me, because you'd Google how do you do particle systems in After Effects, and every video would be like, here's how to do it, super easy, and then in the like description it's like, by the way, you need this like really expensive plugin. But it's fine, because I used it as a business expense on my taxes, which helped with the them freelancer taxes. But aside from that, I've got the Particular plugin, and I'm gonna like quickly save my project, because it doesn't always run like super well on my computer, given the particles. But here's our rain. It's like Particular's actually setting up like a proper particle system with rains, and it's 3D and stuff, but you put it like in the scene and it will by default all be on like a flat plane. Hold on, let me get like way in there, so you can see like here's all the particles are visible, and then here's where like the particles that are supposed to be behind the bus stop are behind the bus stop, and the ones that are supposed to be behind the trees are behind the trees. And it reacts a bit to like the camera movements, like the camera's moving through the rain, and it just feels a bit more right because it's actually like simulated. I did have a couple issues with the camera movement. It would act a bit weird sometimes, but I mean, it works well enough. I had to do some digging online for a tutorial that it was kind of talking about like how you can use depth maps for particular, because what you can sometimes do in particular is this thing called an obscuration layer. And you can say like, oh, there's a character in the foreground. Well, I want the rain, say, or whatever particle you have, to be in front of and behind them in the scene, so they will be the obscuration layer. It'll factor them in, but you can only pick one obscuration layer. And this also obscure width is not a layer. It's kind of a different thing. But in this sense, I wanted some behind the tree, some in front, some behind this. I didn't want just the one. And sometimes I have other issues with it when things are pre-comped and it acts a little silly. So I went with the depth map method, which is a thing that basically like I had to create a depth map, long story short. And a depth map is more common for like 3D things, but what it is like if this like thing is this bright, it means it's this close to the camera, and if it's this dark, it means it's that far away from the camera. And this isn't really set up quite correctly. I realized this later, like this should be brighter now and it should animate as the camera gets further away, but that's besides the point. It generally works. It makes the rain look correct enough, because when the camera motion's in play, it doesn't quite work. And there was another plugin that they suggested that they were like, this plugin lets you get a pixel perfect depth map in After Effects, and it just does it. And I was like, I don't want to buy that, so I'll just do it myself. And then I did. But basically you have to duplicate your entire composition and make a version of it where things that are close to the camera are brighter and things further away are darker. And I turn off all the effects and everything else, just get rid of it so it's super clean. And I put in just fill effects on everything. And when I did this in the future with another project, I actually did try and animate the brightness to follow the camera. And it works okay. So anyways, you make that depth map and then you tell Particular to use that depth map. And it kind of just worked pretty well for this scene. But I've had some other things I've worked on since then that I have some issues with, or I have to mess with these numbers and it's a bit confusing. But generally speaking, this will get you most of the way there. This is at least the place to start looking for that. So by then you've got particles that go in front of and behind things and react to camera motion. So it was handy for that shot, and I did it, and I was like, I like the way the rain looks, so I went all the way back to the beginning and replaced the old After Effects default rain I had with my new particle rain. I did the exact same thing for the shot with it's in here somewhere. That shot, this one. Yes, I did the same thing here. And kind of here, I used Particular for the rain falling down here, but I also have some puddle effects on the floor. But what I've got down here is same setup as before. It was like an art piece with separated layers, so I moved this towards the camera, moved that further away, or the ground further away. And then I've got this layer called Drizzle, which if we solo, it looks like this, which is real crazy. And it's basically the After Effects drizzle effect. And I did have to look up a tutorial to figure out kind of how that really worked. It should just be expected at this point that any effect I use that seems really crazy, I definitely looked up a tutorial for it, because I mean, how else are you going to learn how to use it? I don't have time to read the full documentation on every effect. It's more engaging in video form. Gotta love it. But yeah, you've got like this layer here, and I think I just blended it with the color dodge or something. And also, what is this? Oh yeah, I made it so that the rain would disappear if it got too close to center camera. Is that for the drizzle? Or was this for the rain? Wait, I changed my rain. I do have it for the rain, but apparently also for the drizzle effect. I'm not really sure why. I think just so it wouldn't be too distracting. But the 3D rain is kind of set up so when it gets close to the middle, it just fades into non-existence, because the way the particle system set up wasn't quite realistic to the scale. I couldn't quite figure it out, so it looked weird. Like the rain would go like on top of the hand, and I didn't quite have time to figure out that whole 3D obscuration layer thing. So I just said when it gets near the middle, it disappears, and that way it just kind of worked. And it doesn't, like, the rain doesn't actually drive the drizzle effect on the floor. They both just do their own thing, and it just kind of works because rain is chaos. We've got this scene here. I'm going to turn off the lighting that we have and turn off the adjustment layer. Actually, you know what? There's an easier way to do this, which is a mechanic I'm trying to use more now. Oh, wait, hold on. This shot's a separate shot. Let's go back into active camera. One view, please. Okay. Let's solo that and the background. Oh, I locked the background. One of those. And turn off motion blur. So bare bones basic, like this is what we've got right here. Honestly, can't remember exactly how this looks from afar, like exactly what's moving. Like is she moving or the camera moving or both, and how so? So let's get a little kind of away look at this. She's not moving at all. I think it's just, you can't see the camera when you hit play, but you can do it when I scrub through like this. So yeah, the background you can see kind of fade in, and then the camera flies in and moves back. She doesn't move at all. The background was like a little city background that was included in a lot of background images that were provided to me, but I think there's just a big blur on it. And then the offset effect, which you can kind of do that and you can do that with, but I animated it so it would just kind of go. So yeah, that flies in. And I also, because I was just going crazy with the rain, I just put like the whole rain particle system in here, and you might not even really notice it in a video. Well, with motion blur off, you definitely notice it. It's some snow particles. Turn motion blur on, and then it's rain. It's just a bunch of kind of things flying by, especially when you turn on all the lights and actually if we unsolo everything to bring everything back, I mean, you can kind of tell things are happening, but then like the effects on top of that, it kind of gets lost in the noise a little bit, but I still appreciate having it there. Originally I tried to do an effect with the rain where it matched the frame rate of her movements, which was kind of fun, but it just felt a little too distracting for me, so I turn that off, because her frame rate of the running is different from the frame rate of the video in the background, and I could have matched them up, but it's kind of not that uncommon in like anime scenarios to have mismatched frame rates for foreground and background or camera motions, and I kind of like it. It's a neat look. Something else to go over would be the glitch effects that are used kind of frequently, or at least in a few different spots. It's not all one effect. There's a few things going on, but if you've used the plugin I used before, you might recognize the way these layers look. It was basically a combination of a plugin that was free online that does some like glitchy stuff. Actually, this is the plugin here. If you're interested in it, it is free. But once it's like set up, it kind of will just make something start glitching out, and then you have this controller with different things to control, and I kind of had to make it look kind of the way I wanted to, and also start and stop kind of smoothly. It was a bit tricky, but basically I start with that as a base and then throw extra effects on top. There's actually an older version of this shot where some different effects were happening, and then we kind of made it a little more crazy, and it looks a bit better crazy, I think. But ooh, that looks crazy. You can kind of see what things are happening here. There's this wave warp effect, which is animated in, and it goes real crazy. The wave warp effect is my new favorite effect, by the way. It's just so fun. And then this adjustment layer has a lot of things going on, and I reuse some of these effects frequently for when I do these kind of bright, kind of, glitchy, kind of grungy transitions that go all crazy. It's basically a bunch of effects that say, okay, start happening, and then stop. Not like immediately, but it drops out a bit faster than it starts, and then the wave warp is happening underneath. So you get all this, like, let's put that on full, because it looks kind of crunchy right now. It looks just as crunchy. Nope, there it is. Okay, yeah, you get like all this crazy stuff going on, all this nice looking detail, and the majority of that is just the wave warp effect. And the wave warp is meant to not really quite be like that. Like if we were to take a solid, and I'm going to put some fractal noise on it just so you can see texture. So just imagine this is just an image. I mean, I guess it is. And then we take the wave warp effect. It does like this, and I think it animates as well. And you might think like, I don't really have a use for this effect, but if you change, I like to change the direction, which you can do to like that, and then you can change the wave type. You've got these different things. Square's kind of fun because it's, you know, very on off. You can change the height of the waves like that. You've got triangle. That's kind of weird. I haven't really used any of these other ones. But if you take it to my favorite one, which is noise, you get something kind of crazy. And with noise, you've got like just this very crunchy thing going on. You can change the height to be super crazy like this, but then animate it in kind of like that. And it has some issues with the way it speeds in when you try and set it up to be smooth. It doesn't quite always work. But change the wave width to be really high if you want very blocky waves, or really low if you want just a lot going on. And I usually turn off the animation of the waves unless you want it to be all crazy, because usually it just looks a bit uniform. You can kind of see the like a pattern sometimes. You could set it real low, but I noticed it doesn't let you set it like super low, because I was trying to do a thing where it was moving like slow motion almost, but it kind of doesn't like it when you're on noise and going super crazy. It just comes out looking a little funny. But sometimes I'll just turn it off entirely and then just animate like that in. And then on top of it, you just put a billion effects, and that's how you get a bunch of this happening right here. And then I take this whole transition, and then I take the glitch thing from before, the glitch plugin, on top of it, and it adds some extra things like this that are just kind of difficult to do manually. So it does like a bit of the work for me, but it has to be built upon some other stuff to really kind of feel smooth. But that's used as well in like the shot of Jupiter here, and a couple other places that have some glitch things happening. Basically anywhere in my comp where you see this inside of a layer, I don't think I've got some there as well. But that'll be the glitch plugin, because that's just the way it sets it up. So speaking of Jupiter, I can talk a little bit about the mouth and eye animations here. Hey, this is Andrew from like the future, like a day or 2 or 3 later. I can't really remember. Basically, I was going back through editing the video and realized my explanation for the next bit that I was doing was like really bad. So I'm back to do it again, but a bit better. Just to start off, the majority of what I did for the mouth animations was taken from this video here, just an Odisho is how to make anything react to music and audio in Adobe After Effects. If you want to just get like the specifics, I would watch this. But there's one thing that's a bit less covered in that. That I'll go over. But anyways, so basically the gist of the mouth animations. So I started with the old mouth as a base, and actually I don't think this is the old mouth. There's like a version of the mouth that's just like art, like not the one I made. This works anyways. So then I made a shape layer and basically just traced over it. Well, that's not what I want to do. That was making a mask. We're going to click off of the layer, make a shape layer, and then I just made one for like each of the teeth, I guess. You could call them teeth. And I'm not going to go through all of them. But anyways, I did one for each one, pretty much got rid of the background, and then I had my new mouth. So then the other thing you want to do is have like your voice line, and I dragged something in here.
You dirty rats.
So you click on your audio, go up to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Convert Audio to Keyframes, and that will give you this fun layer that has a bunch of stuff here. It'll give you stuff for the left and right channel, but I just get rid of those and you work with both channels. And it's just keyframes based on the audio.
You dirty rats.
and it's a bit kind of clunky to begin with, and there's some ways you can smooth it out, one of which was talked in the video I spoke of a second ago, which will be linked in the description. It was like using a panel I've never really used before called like the smoother panel. I don't know, it was kind of weird. The gist of the animation though, let's see, we'll go into, here's our shapes here. This is rectangle. You want to go down to transform rectangle. If you do transform for the whole shape, you'll move the entire thing as like one from the center, and you don't want that. You want the transform for just the shape you're working with. In the scale, like you can move it like that, or you can unlink them together and move just up and down, which is pretty handy. So we just want to move that really, and have it react to like these audio keyframes here. And these this audio, the keyframes it gave us, it's kind of weird data. It goes from like -50 down here to like 100 something. So if we were to just straight up tie the scale to that, it's now going from, see right now the slider value is 2, so the scale is also at 2. And then if we jump to where the slider value is at, like, see, right, the value graph, I think doesn't give me the correct values, that it should be these values here. So like 4, right now the scale is 4. So it's kind of still small. So you can kind of see a flicker happening there. But basically what we want to do is say, so the slider will be going from, let's say, 0 up to 4. And that's its scale there. There's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we want is for the scale of this to go from like 100 to like maybe, I don't know, 120. We want it to grow like a little bit. And so that's that there. And so what you can do, there's a way you can basically say, I want 0 to equal 100, and I want 4 to equal 120, and everything else in between will kind of just figure itself out. Generally, what I figured out was the way to do that is this keyframe. You can either start it with linear or ease, and I'm going to be honest, I don't really know the difference. I don't know if ease is just smoother. I would imagine. I think it might have other uses. I'm not really sure. But then type in value, I guess. I kind of forgot that bit the first few times. I got very confused. And then let's say we want 0 to 5 to equal 100 to 120. And I'm pretty sure that's the gist of what's happening here. So now 0 to 5, and we can mess with these values a bit if it doesn't seem quite right. But we can see now it's kind of peaking because it's going past 4. But yeah, 0 to 5 equals 100 to 120. But we only want it to move up and down. So we go down into the expression down here. And I found the easiest way to do this. And I don't fully get it because I'm not super smart expressions person, but these are our scale values here. Basically, you got 108 by 108. If we just set the first one to 100, it'll lock at 100, and then only the second one will move. So there we go. It's an up and down scaling thing. And if we want it to move more, we say just increase this number to like 150. There we go. And then to get it to happen for the others, basically you just do the same thing for the other shapes under the transform, scale that. Now they both do it, and there's probably a much easier way of offsetting it the way I did, because I had it where it started like from the left and went to the right generally, and so it kind of was this fluid looking motion. But I'm sure there's an expression for it, something to do with value at time, which I couldn't quite wrap my head around. So what I ended up doing was duplicating the slider and then setting this to follow the duplicated slider. That wasn't the right way to do it. Both channels 2 is what it's called. So now this follows the duplicated one, and then just go into the duplicated one and move the keyframes around. Whoops. That's not the button I'm looking for. There's a button to select all these keyframes. I don't know it. And then just move the keyframes over a bit. And now it's offset like a tiny bit. You could do it by just like a keyframe. And then I did that for all of them. So that's why in the end there's like 13 slider effects, which was a bit much, but it worked. And then you just add glows and stuff after, and there you have your mouth animation. But yeah, the eye effects were much simpler. Or at least it would seem that way at a glance. It's basically a mask that goes like down and up to close and open the eye. However, the eyes had their own like built-in glows originally, and you could see like the glows being erased, but I wanted the glows to glow all around, so I think I just took the eye and went with like my own glow, or they didn't have a glow originally and I put a glow on. It's one of those two. Here's our blinking mat that we have going on. Here's our blinking animations. It's here you can see it in real time. There's a little mask that goes down and up like that. Actually missed a spot. Look at that. It just kind of pops down like that, and then there's a few glow effects put on afterwards to make it kind of glow, which is nice. And so when it closes, it, does the right thing. However, you'll notice some of it's visible through the hair, and I have to remember exactly how I set that up. I think I had the eye blinking layer. Yeah, I had a second one that's like blended on top with another matte going on to be seen through the hair, because in the original artwork you can see it through the hair, but in here I needed the blinking to happen both under and over the hair. And so I did kind of have to do a little bit of visual trickery to bring that back. But yeah, all that to say, those are some funky eyebrows. All that to say, there's blinking and mouth animation. So you take all that and you put it into a little scene right here. And you got a background, a little bit of very vague camera motion. You can see if you move around, just a little wiggle expression. And that plays over the whole thing, and you take that shot, and that is going to bring us on to the fun Blender part, because some people might not assume this right out of the gate, but the 3D shot that is shown in the trailer, the big kind of 3D shot where the camera pulls back with people, is something I threw together myself, more or less, because originally what I had was this image right here, and the idea was, the same shot as before. It was a more higher res version of this. I have the low res version here. But, the idea is camera is close up to screen, she's talking, and then you zoom out, you see it's a screen, and then you zoom out, and there's a bunch of characters looking at it and going, oh my God, there's stuff happening. The problem with that is like, this is just one flat image, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, it's also like there's perspective, it's at an angle. It would just look kind of like this. It would be zooming out. It wouldn't be a camera motion. You've got all this perspective of the beams, the walkways here. It doesn't move. And then you've got all the characters here. How exactly are you going to place them to where it looks right? In the end, it would just look like we're zooming out of a flat image, and the whole thing would be flat. And the screen would also be kind of a weird angle. It would be stretched a bit. I'd have to figure out how to make it straight, but then have the camera move a bit. It kind of, I imagined it in my head, and I thought that could work, but I don't really want to do it. So I said, could I maybe do it 3D? And they were like, sure, I guess. And so I made that room in 3D. So here we are. This is the 3D shot that shows up in the trailer. I basically just took, not that image, this image, and this was all I had, and used it to design this room. And it's not like the most perfect 3D room or 3D scene in general. I'm still a bit amateur level 3D. I like to think I'm doing all right. What is happening there? I messed something up somewhere. That's a piece that's supposed to be hidden. That's an old piece of the TV, I think. But yeah, we've got, let me center in here. You've got the camera here. Let's just follow it, actually. The whole scene just plays out in Blender, basically. This all happens. I'm actually going to save real quick. Blender likes to crash a bit when I do this kind of screen displaying on a thing, rendered view. But then the camera pulls out, does its thing. This is all just part of a 3D scene, 3D camera. So I just exported this from After Effects and went and put it in as a text here. I would say I put it like on the TV screen, but I think, yeah, I just kind of stuck it in there, didn't I? This is just a plane that plays the video, and I set up the timing and everything to be right. and got the audio in there so I could figure out the audio kind of synchronization, and then set it to zoom out, and I could actually have the camera move between the characters, and you got the perspective of like all the different things. You got, it's a scene, and there they all are. They look so beautiful. Moving on, character sections are actually probably the more straightforward ones. You got 3D elements, a camera, a couple null objects that are used to animate the camera. Just tie the camera to the empty objects, animate that. That's how I get my camera movements. But let's turn this on like half res so it looks a little less soft. We've got the text boxes, which I could go over real quick. It's basically some stuff that looks like this. I don't know why it's given me 2 views and not the option to go to 1 view. Shouldn't that be the button that's right here? Okay, here it is. Sure. Did I mess something else up? Okay, no, I don't think so. Here's the text box. It's just this kind of crazy thing. It's a very wide fractal noise texture with some color stuff and some scan lines, and then an outer glow, and these bars are like a shape layer. And then if we kind of let it play in, the text flickers in and it does this like little animated thing. And that is an After Effects text animator, which you can mess around with by clicking this animate button down here. But I highly recommend just watching a video tutorial for it, because there's like, it's a very confusing effect to mess with. But what I'm animating is the value of the text, which the value is like what character it is, like A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. And when you animate that all crazy, you can also check this box that says like random order if we find it somewhere. Randomize order on, turn that off. I think it goes like left to right or something. Yeah, generally left to right. Turn on randomize order. It goes all crazy, and you have it animate from a wild value down to a normal value type thing, or the correct value of the text. So then it animates into the name, and the flicker is just some opacity stuff. I've got a bunch of hold keyframes here, go from like 0% to 75 to 25 to 15, 65. It just flickers and then turns on. And yeah, that's your text. And I have one of these comps for like every character, so I could do the colors and the name different for everybody. But I just slap that in there, animate it to like move up or down or in or out, however I want. And then the background, we've got some shape details. I love the shape details for this. I got some fun shapes here. If we look in our very unorganized comp folder somewhere, hold on, comps, shape details, I made some dice, which, yeah, there it is. I don't know why the thing keeps starting in the abyss, my little playhead. I made dice for each of the things, and then I made some fun shapes with different variations of shapes. We got some of those shapes. This is my favorite shape. Look at that one. That's a crazy shape. So with all these background things, if we were to solo them, maybe not that one, you've got a bunch of shapes back here. They're basically being told to blend with my new favorite blending mode, which is color dodge or classic color dodge, whichever works better, I guess. But it kind of changes its brightness depending on it kind of reacts to the background a bit, and it just looks real pretty, depending on your background. And these backgrounds were just like images that just had a bunch of blur effects on them. It's a technique I've used a lot in the past whenever I just want a colorful kind of faded colors background with some variety. Just take a pre-existing image and just kind of mess with it. But you can plug any image into that and get different results. So there's no real rhyme or reason to it. You just kind of mess around till it looks right, and then you can change the hue to be different colors, which is how I kind of did variations for the different characters. They would have different backgrounds with different hue adjustments, but the shape layers would basically be the same shape layers that I had before. I would use a couple different variations, put them in different places, different sizes, put like a little hexagon up there, have the numbers over here, switch the small and large numbers, change the way they animate. Basically, it's not quite as easy as just copy pasting. It's copy pasting and then changing just a tiny bit of every single thing, just so it feels a little different. Same way I play Planet Coaster. I use like 5 trees and bushes and just kind of rotate them around and scale them to where I get like what looks like an entire forest, but it's just like 5 rocks. And then this background is a particle system. It's a particular thing. It's a bunch of squares that move. Very cool. Oh, I don't want to skip this shot. This one was fun. This is one I was excited to cover. The text is nothing too crazy. Let's try and figure out what the text is. That's text. Okay. That's text too. I think I had 2 different text layers, one that was red and one that was not red, orange, burnt orange, and so they would be like the same thing, but I had one that would like fade in then out. So our text layer looks like this. There's a particle system in the background for some extra fun numbers, and that's just kind of in the background. But then we've got our basic like text layers here, and these are not a particle system. I just set them in 3D space and animated them to move and feel like it was part of the particle system. A whole lot of stuff happening here. Just it's you've clearly got some blurs and glows, and just the edges. The red ones, same thing, but I made them red and I got rid of the background particle system because I only wanted these to be red, and I animated them existing. I made them fade in and out. I didn't animate orange to not orange. I animated in and out and then put it on top of the other one. So then when you have it with everything else, it kind of, you can see the edges here. I must have not turned on repeating pixels on the edge of something or other. It's fine, because when you turn off the transparent background, you can't really tell. But that's in the final. That's fun. So anyways, this background is the fun part. I'm going to open that up real quick. It's basically this camera shot that does this, and it goes real crazy, and it moves through this crazy web, which is, oh man, my orientation's all weird. I think this started out as like a plane, and then I subdivided the plane, not like an airplane, like a flat picture, little piece of paper, and I subdivided it. I like cut it into a bunch of pieces, and then I put on a modifier that said like the edges inside would be like wire, like this, like little pieces of wire. It's I think the wireframe modifier, and then I kind of randomized the points using perpetual. What do they call it? Perpetual. It's not the word. It's proportional editing. I set it to random, so when I moved like one point, the other points around it would move, but in kind of a random way. Why can't I see my? I don't know. Oh, I couldn't see my proportional editing circle. I'm not going to worry about it right now, because the point is I made a bunch of random things, turned it into a spear, made it all crazy, and then I duplicated it because I needed more crazy, and I put that all around. I made it real small in the end. And then I took a camera and I said, I want you to like spin around and then look up and go up, and then I want your focal length to change while you do that. Which the focal length being it looking like this and then that. I want you to go more crazy as you go, and I want you to really pull back and go woo, and we're going like into space. And then I took all that, had to do some fun stuff for this texture here. You can see there's all these fun lights going around. I got a technique from Ian Hubert, which was I like watched a Patreon video or something. I can't remember if it was Patreon or not. But if you look at it from the top, you can kind of see what's happening. Basically, this I'm just going to glaze over this because it's kind of complicated and I won't be able to explain it perfectly. This isn't really something you'll be able to follow along with unless you really know what you're doing. And I certainly don't. But it's basically the texture of the thing is projected from up here, like the UVs are projected from up here. You can see this is here and it's scaled like that. Whoops, let's select all. There we go. There it is right there. If we turn on the texture, you can see it reacting. I made this image of blue squares. You can see here, I made this image and it's set to loop. You can't see it looping, but it is in theory looping. But if you move the UVs up and down, like animate that, then you can see it moving on the texture. And apparently that's just a thing you can do. That's just a thing you can do. And then I made these fun particles. I made like a little particle system, which isn't something I do often in Blender, but it was easier to do it in Blender because, you know, it's here. And then, yeah, just camera moves through it while it goes all crazy, and it's just a whole mess of effects. And you take that, you put it in After Effects, and then I put some effects on it, and then I put some effects on it, and I put some effects on it, then I put some effects on it, like so. And then you've got a fun little background, and then I added like a little flash at the end, like a radial blur that I changed to a zoom blur or something. No, I did the light rays effect, and it just goes all crazy at the end. I'm going to go over this clock shot as well because it was pretty fun and fancy. It looks so good just on its own, but I mean, on its own, it's not much. You know, I mean, it's cool. It'd make for a great Doctor Who intro, but it needed to have something to do with the game, so I put the game images on top. But there's a few things going on. Let me go into my custom view so I can remember. Wow, we're in space now, huh? I feel like Markiplier. To start with, this image of the clock face, I didn't exactly make it myself. I turned it into an image myself. But basically what it was this free 3D asset from, I believe, Polyhaven was the place. They also do like HDRIs and other stuff. It's like an all-in-one Blender thing. But this was just a free asset, and I just really liked the clock face on it. And so I kind of just ripped the face out and the hands like separately. And I took a picture of it in Blender and put that picture into After Effects. And because I made the hands separate and this little bit that goes over the hands separate, I layered it all together and made a little animation in After Effects, and was able to animate it myself. And so this background here is actually, if I could go back to the active camera and let's see if I can just solo that. This background, if we turn off all its effects, it was something I did by accident. Basically, I took this, I moved it out, and I like scaled it. Or yeah, that's it. And I got this weird thing in here and was like, that looks crazy. So I put it like into After Effects, but I thought that looks rather boring. So I put on some color, and then this twirl effect, which was my moment of genius that perfected the shot, and like a weird glow thing for like fake bloom, and put that in the background. And so that's just kind of behind everything. And then these ring things are actually, I think, moving in 3D space. I tried to set it up to where it felt like 3D. It didn't quite work, but they move towards the camera, I guess, and they, I think, blend a bit. Yeah, if you turn that off, it looks way more bland, but blend it with the background, it looks really cool. And then there's this front clock face that's doing its own thing, and then you've got these particular particle system things out here. So if we turn that off, yeah, that thing's real fun. And I didn't set that up in any super fancy way. I think I set up a circle here that basically just said, wherever this circle is, don't show a particle. So it looks like the particles are around and behind it, but really they're technically also in front of it and in it, but I just made them non-visible. All right, real quick, I'm gonna go over this lightning as well, because that's a really fun part of it. Now, it sounds less impressive if I say it was done with, I think, an effect, where is it? It's called Advanced Lightning 2. And that sounds like the kind of effect that would just kind of do it for you. Like you just slap it on and you're like, oh, there you go, I've made lightning. But it doesn't like animate as lightning. And it's used for a lot of different things. You can use it as like, you know, like Star Wars, like force lightning effects where it's going all crazy for a while. Or like you can have a lightning arc between 2 points or something. You can use it for a lot of different things. But you really have to like make it work for what you're doing. And to make it look like a lightning strike, first of all, I tried doing it and then I realized I don't know what lightning looks like. So I ended up like going online, and I'm pretty sure it was like the slow-mo guy's video on lightning, and just watched lightning in slow motion, and I was like, oh, that's what lightning does. And so I just kind of animated the way the lightning comes out and does its thing, and the way it flashes like it was a separate effect. So like the lightning enters the scene and it doesn't really flash until like after it hits, and then it goes like boom and it goes crazy and a couple times, and then it like fades back in slowly. I think I put a real light in the scene. Yeah, I think that's what that is. There's also a couple flare effects, which is a plugin called Optical Flares that I also bought because it's very handy for cool looking flares. And so these two lightning strikes are these little chunks here that do like a whole thing. It's just a thing in the background, but then an adjustment layer that says make everything flash. But then I went real extra and I went into like these characters and I animated a curves effect so that whenever it struck, like they would be a little more silhouetted, because originally the adjustment layer made everything bright, including them, but I wanted them to look like it was more behind them. And it was, yeah, there you go. So like it's real bright behind them, but they're kind of dark despite everything else. So I kind of did a lot of cheating like that to make it look like a lightning strike, which was kind of a lot of work for something that's just like a couple frames, but you know, I just felt like doing it. I think I was still delirious off COVID, so let's just blame it all on that. The other thing that I put a lot of work into was this kind of glass mirror shot here. I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. I had no idea how it was going to turn out until after I did it. I'll be honest, I started with a tutorial on how to do like a shattered glass effect in After Effects. I went through a couple different videos that showed them for different things, and this emulates one of them more than the other. Basically, this whole thing right here is its own comp. I have it on quarter res right now, but the camera moving in, moving out is its own thing, and that's what's inside the glass for all of these. Out here, we have our own shot going on. I'm going to turn off motion blur, anything to make it go faster. This is our shot right here. Camera comes in, it moves, but then inside these glass comps, it's doing its own thing. And then I had this image somewhere. If I could just, this right here. Found this online, free texture from one of those free texture sites. I had to do some digging to find one that felt just right for me. And then I think I like spun it upside down or switched its like orientation in some way so it worked better. But basically I took like this and I made a mask or a mat for like a bunch of different pieces of the background and duplicated it in like different ones. Oh yeah, no, here we go. I had these mats here. If you like turn it on, solo it, that's one shard of glass. And I just had like an hour where I went around and traced out a bunch of pieces of glass and went in and did that one, any one where it's different. I traced a different piece, and some of them I kind of cheated and put a few all in like one chunk because I'm like, I don't want to do every shard of glass, but apparently I did 30 shards according to this number here. So then these are all in the background. I think what this glass is doing, I put it back on top, and I put this volumetric effect on top so it looks like light shining through if we turn the glass off. And then I have like a white background behind it. If we turn that off, you can see these are all the shards. And the background, it didn't look all fractured like this. Like you had the lines and the shards, but I had to grab all of these individual pieces, like that one right there, and move them around. And I messed with it for so long to get a look that I liked, where you had different versions of his face and some where the eyes were kind of close and like he was up here. But at first I moved them all a tiny bit and it didn't really work because all the face was like around him here. You didn't get anything fun happening here. So I moved a bunch of chunks over to have duplicates of his face around. And yeah, then put on a white background so it looked like light coming through. That wasn't enough, so I did this to have light coming through. And then I think I kind of I got the glass texture and blended it on top, so you got a little bit of that extra glass detail and kind of wear and tear in there just for free. Just slap it on. I mean, I made it from this glass texture. I might as well use it to finish up the feel. And yeah, all that, then you've got all this movement happening, and the camera moves a little differently in the background shot because it's like this shot but moved to the side, but it kind of just works. And the background kind of is this fun I think it's the CC Collida effect. CC Collida. It's just a background that I put CC Collida on and animated, and I kind of set it up just right so it like had a bunch of bright things right at that moment, so it kind of just worked to where camera pulls out and then the background kind of flashes real bright suddenly with this fun trippy effect. Kind of just worked out pretty nice that way. I'm happy with it. Okay, and kind of the last big thing was this shot here, but you'll notice a lot of it is kind of the same as the clock shot from before, except this time we've got like just a bunch of different clock like things going around here, and the hands are kind of large, so they really work for that one. But yeah, we've got all these rings going around here. If we like soloed one, yeah, we've got different sized ones, and I didn't have to worry about making something to fit in there because she covers it up, which was very, very handy. And I think they're rotating different directions from each other, so you've got this kind of, this one twists right, this one twists left, and so you've got all that in the background. Actually, yeah, let's build this up. So you've got all that in the background with the hands moving around. Let's turn off motion blur. So that's how that looks. It looks really bad on quarter res. Yeah, you get that, and then I've got the walking animation. Where is that? The walking animation, it's in here somewhere. There it is. Kind of had to put it together myself because what it was 2 frames. It was basically one with the arms one way, one with the arms the other way. So I switched back and forth between them, but I also put in this little bounce to it and beat with the music. So that was all done in this comp here. So then when I moved out here, I didn't have to animate her again. It just kind of worked that way. So I felt like that was my best way to make the best use of the 2 frames, was have her move kind of up and down a bit, so there was a bit more movement going on. So then I had like this, I do my camera animation so that I have that sorted. Camera pulls in. That's pretty happy with that. And I needed to make it more interesting, so there's what is this? Texture on the clocks. That looks really cool. There's a particle effect, which are these lines going in here. And that's like this shot here that I made, apparently, with a twirl effect on it. I completely forgot how I did that until I opened it just now. But yeah, and then we've got these things. I was going to have a particle system for these pieces of text, but I could never get the particle system to display them just the way I wanted, because the way particles will do in creative apps is like, you'll just say, okay, go, and I want this many particles in this area moving in this way, but there will be a particle like covering her face in a certain way, and that one will be over here, and I'm like, I wish I could tell the program to keep everything else. I like the way everything else looks, but that particle, just get that out of there. But you can't really do that. I don't know which programs have that capability, but Blender does not, unless you get crazy with geometry nodes, and then you have a bit more flexibility. There are workarounds in that, and then in particular you can't do it. So I basically just set these all up in 3D space and animated them to move around. If we select them all, you can see they have bits of movement over here that they do. So you've got all that text on, and then it was some lighting that goes on top of that. And I always like adding on lighting, and actually I think the lighting's already visible. This is without lighting. This is with lighting. Lighting acts differently when you solo layers. Some static on top, I guess. Scan lines, TV effects, chromatic aberration, more scratch lines, anamorphic, adjustment layer. These are all the camera rigs they should already be on. At this point, I've soloed pretty much everything. This thing, which I think... Oh, it's the same thing I had earlier, just copy-pasted, slapped in the background, and... I locked it just now. And I animated a bit of turbulent noise, so it warbled a bit. This thing was added on later. This is Jupiter's face. I stole it from earlier, and the mouth is, I think, the old mouth. It's not doing any crazy animations. It's just the one that was originally built into the art. The eyes, I stole my eye animation from earlier, reversed it, made it slow motion, and then added these fun glows. It's apparently just a radial fast blur doing some stuff. Yeah, that's fun. and it just adds this fun effect, and it looks kind of bad on its own. Like, it just kind of looks like that, but when you put it in everything else and it gets affected by all the other adjustments and everything, and it really like glows back there. And I also set it to add and not normal. Normal does that because there's all this like extra data there, but add just makes the brightest parts appear. So anyways, you put that in the background, like physically back there as a 3D plane, then you just have this cool eyes flash up thing. There are a lot of assets happening here, huh? Yeah, the eyes flash up real cool, and then I decided that wasn't enough, so over here I put in some extra. Where does it happen? I think it's outside of this comp. Everything here is doing it, apparently. So it would appear I used find edges to kind of do this funky effect on here. I'm trying to turn it off, and it's just not happening. There it is. It's not enjoying loading this shot right now, but I used that find edges effect to make it go from that to that, and then I split it into like 3 pieces and had them move away from each other, and I had all these extra effects of color and things, It's how I do. You just take a bunch of things, slap it on it. Oh, and here's the offset effect. This whole thing I used a few times where it would have that old film mess up kind of effect where it like the whole thing moves like that. It's just the offset effect, which is right here. And if I were to move that and give it a second to load, it doesn't really like how much it's trying to figure out right now. The offset effect, you can move that around, animate it, and make it look like film acting up, which I don't know if film does that exactly, but it has the vibe of old film doing a weird thing. I do the same thing in here as well. There's a bit where it offsets a couple times for some added interesting visuals. And then everything after that's kind of standard. I do the same wave warp flashy effects to bring all the characters in, offset that so it happens one at a time as the camera pulls out, particular particles in the background, it's going all crazy, and then another wave warp thing with some glitchy stuff all together for the text. And some more fun shapes in the background. It really is just like Planet Coaster. You take like the same 5 bushes and you've got a forest. If anything's the main takeaway from this video, it's that, I guess. So yeah, I think that's all I've got to show off here. But like I said earlier, if you have any questions, please give them to me in the comments, or at me on Twitter if you feel like it, or follow me on Twitter if you feel like it, because you'll see more from me there than on YouTube, because I not uploading all that often, but I am still alive, I promise. You could also follow me on Twitch if you want one Twitch stream every 2 to 500 weeks, somewhere in that range. I'll do a little stream on Twitch and show some of my video stuff live if you want to check that out. That aside, I think that just about covers everything I wanted to show off. So thank you for watching.